Hello and welcome back to Fires and Gaming. My name is Ben and today we're going to continue on with Suzerain. So last time out we kickstarted the H3 Highway project. We made a deal with Marcel Caranti. We attended Bernard Cirque's funeral and we had some discussions about our potential foreign relations. So let's go and pick it up here because we've got one report and a whole bunch of newspapers. So let's do the report, why not? Alright, from Arvery, Young Swords member claimed links to the government. A detained Young Swords member in Arvery claimed that he has connections to the government. We've been investigating the truth of his claims, but we're not able to find any leads. Investigation ongoing. Fantastic. Alright, let's check Whole Sword, see if there's a report here. Nope, just another story beat. So let's check out the newspapers. Alright, from the Whole Sword Post. Let's see, where are you? There we go. Emergency in Anarcha, Mayor announces. Troubling news are coming from the mayor of Anarcha, who reported that a state of chaos exists in the city and called an emergency directive authorizing him to use his security powers. In an announcement, Mayor Lest said, "We are reporting 20 police officers heavily wounded, 2 police stations burned down and several shot. The city is in a state of emergency and we're trying to restore order." The local gendarmerie began assisting the mayor after the emergency request was made. The armed units are now securing critical junctions and key infrastructure like power stations, hospitals, and municipality building. Cool, that sounds fun. Alright, looks like we got 2 from Lockhaven Times. The first up is Welfare Issues of Narbel. Narbel, a city that was once an important trade stop for the Marquian Empire, has been in a steep decline for the last decade. We have uncovered the hard truth from the residents themselves. K.A. 46, a shepherd living near the Cavadir Mountains that did not wish to disclose his real name, has made shocking remarks about the city's and region's lack of healthcare services. He has waited almost 5 months just to get an appointment in the rural region. Another resident, a farmer, IOI 57, who also did not wish to disclose his name, is living near the outskirts of Narbel. His children, AOI 14 and VOI 16, have to use dangerous mountain paths to walk to their school located 2 kilometers away, even in the harshest seasons. Interesting, alright. That may or may not be something we address later, I'm not sure yet. And unrest continues. The unrest in the streets is continuing, and the tension between different groups has led to new clashes, with hundreds wounded and sometimes several dead a week. Our reporters have interviewed dozens of protest leaders from the regional capitals, revealing different demands from the people. 3 subjects stand out: freedom of expression, democratic change, and economic security. On the other hand, many also went out to protest the worsened living conditions under their session. Every third person on teams talked to mention the need for strengthening the political system that needs to open up to reflect differing opinions. Our eyes on the ground witnessed both peaceful and violent acts. We saw bus stations destroyed, shops burning, and people being carried to hospitals and ambulances. But there were also calm scenes where police forces allowed peaceful protesters from all sides of the political spectrum to make their voices heard and disperse. Certain cities like Anarcha, Suzerain, and Arvery are much more damaged by the unrest. The overall momentum of the protests doesn't seem likely to stop soon. Cool. Alright, then we got one from the Radical here. There we go. We need democracy. We have long demanded the expansion of civil rights with reforms to modernize our nation. When the previous government blamed the Supreme Court for not allowing reforms, the opposition was quick to point out the flaws from the Constitution and brought focus on reforming the governmental structures to open way for further civil reforms. Now the reformers have increased in number, and with the president who's seen as a symbol of change in office, we are waiting for results. Whether it is the leader of the opposition or our current president, somebody has to break the cycle and rewrite the Constitution made by Tarquin Sol, whose cult of personality shaped our current divided national spirit and must be broken. Will President Rain stand up to the establishment and listen to the people? We will see. I thought the Radical was a communist newspaper. Why do they want democracy? I don't know, whatever. Alright. And last up's from Geopolitico. Swordland closes consulate. Oh yeah, that's right, we closed the consulate last time too. Yeah. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade reacted swiftly to the Rumburg consulate closure in Lockhaven by shutting down the Swordland consulate in Dome, an Agnolian city annexed by Rumburg. His clear retaliatory diplomatic response will draw a lot of attention on the global diplomatic stage, but was welcomed by PM Martin Van Horten of Agnolia. President Rain seems to be decisive against Rumburg, but whether this will be worth it is another question. I mean, it'll probably be worth it in the polls later on. It's like, yeah, I don't really want to go to war in this playthrough. Alright, so let's head to Whole Sword for a briefing on the results of the Reform Committee. I came a little early to the meeting room before anybody showed up. We'd scheduled a meeting to discuss the progress of the Reform Committee regarding the new Constitution. I took a seat on the center chair in the vacant meeting room as I waited for them to show up. The reforms were slowly becoming the most significant expectation of my governments. We would be changing Seoul's constitution to 29. Most people nowadays blame the constitution for the outstanding problems of the country. I said outstanding like it was a good thing. That's alright. On the other hand, the reformists in the assembly were getting louder about their demands. What I knew for sure was that I needed to do something about this encroaching chaos before it swallowed me. Meanwhile, Lucy and Peter and Nia had been leading the committee to prepare an initial draft for the constitutional amendments. I was intrigued to hear the results. There was a knock on the door. It was Lucian.
Good afternoon, sir.
Lucian arrived exactly on the hour mark again. His punctuality could almost be described as obsessive. Are you, waiting behind the door to come in at the exact second?
I'm sorry, sir?
You used to be arriving at the exact second for all the meetings.
Punctuality is important for me, sir. I'm just doing my job.
He took a seat on the table and took out a bunch of documents, spreading them all along the table.
We should begin the meeting as soon as Miss Morgan and Mr. Vice President arrives. We finally have some results from the reform committee.
How's it look?
Well, the situation is quite complicated, sir, but I'm sure we'll make it work, just like we accomplished many things before. We'll go over the details regarding the new constitution in the meeting.
A few minutes later, Peter and Nia also arrived. After a short chat, everyone sat down and took out their notes. I knew it was going to be a long meeting. Oh, there's a lot to talk about the future of this process. Let's begin to tackle the points of contention. Mr. President, our committee meetings were really fruitful, and we already started working on the constitutional draft together with the reformists. They demanded a little too much, but I've had success with Friends Victor to create a realistic draft that could potentially go through the Supreme Court. Oh, little. They demanded to rewrite the whole Constitution. The requests were definitely not outrageous, just not realistic in today's circumstances, just because it won't pass the Assembly. Nonetheless, I'm glad that we're reaching common ground already.
If we can reach an agreement with the reformers, we'll be very strong in the Assembly to propose a change.
Can we reach 2/3 majority in the Assembly?
If you can get Friends Victor to work with you on this, our only problem would be uniting our own party. We'll never be able to get an FP to work with us on this. We need the majority of 130 seats in the Assembly to vote in favour. With PFJP's full support of 7 votes, we'll easily pass the needed 166. But it will be tough to unite the USP with all the divisive wings that is formed. You must make them follow you loyally.
Oh, we did it before the elections, we can do it again. Oh, but Clavin as a reform swing will be supporting him. He already weighted heavily in the committee meetings. However, the Conservatives will be tough to break. The influence of Seoul is still living strong in the party. We will eventually remove his lasting influence. We'll need to break the power of the old guard with the USP first. Most of the Conservative wing is still loyal to the Colonel. Most of the support is necessary to be able to amend the Constitution. And if there is only one person who's key to make them back us. Tori, she's well respected by the Soulists. She'll be our biggest obstacle in the Assembly, and her demands will be extensive. I also have reasons to think she might be in Orsa's pocket. She'll be tough to break, but we'll need her help to get the Conservative support. Well, speaking of Orsa, is it possible to even get this through the Supreme Court?
They are the biggest obstacle. Even if we pass the Assembly, the Chief Justice will do his best to block our amendments. We need at least 6 of the 11 judges to vote for the proposal, but Mr. Harker has enormous influence over the judges.
We should reach out to the judges in secret. Some of them might be willing to break rank to support us. They'll surely spur a just cause for the country and its future. Lucian looked skeptical. That's probably the appropriate response. According to the Constitution, I am a member of the Supreme Court, which means we already have 1 vote. 2 of the judges are friends of mine and have a similar opinion about the reforms. Consider them with me. Who else might be willing to support the reforms? I think Judge Edmonds can be persuaded, and in extension, Mr. Dodson and Mr. Madsen. They weren't really blinded by the Soul's ideology. Yes, those 2 don't seem to be working directly with the Chief Justice Harker. If we can get to Isabel Edmonds, we might get the 6 votes needed. That's the best bet. Cool. What are the final demands then?
We should run down each of the main demands of the committee and get your input first. Mrs. Morgan can explain them further. We'll start with the first red line. The new constitution will fix the loopholes regarding the President's absolute veto powers.
Even though Mr. Richter put on a whole show about why vetoes should be completely removed, the committee has almost unanimously agreed on fixing the loopholes, thus limiting presidential vetoes. My suggestion is to add a clause detailing the methods the Assembly may override veto with some supermajority. 1 person should never be able to block the rest. Let me see. So, I need the guide on the Constitution. Oh, I don't think this part matters too much just yet. It's just discussing what we might want to do. Okay, never mind. Okay, so we don't want to completely remove. Let's just go with that one. They'll not be allowed to dictate the negotiations. This is one of the starting points of the whole discussion about changing the Constitution. I don't think this is up for discussion for any reformists.
The signal is about the judiciary. The new constitution will remove the Supreme Court's right to vote on legislation.
And this is yet another point that is unanimously agreed on by all parties. Attacking still establishes will protect the 29 Constitution. We all know most of the judges are still its pawns. Constitution amendments will still be very difficult to accomplish with a form like this, particularly because we will keep the 2/3 vote system to be able to propose change. However, the judiciary will not have the final say in the amendments. Yeah, that's what we already wanted to do. Yes, this will ensure that there won't be another politically motivated Supreme Court. Well, I mean, not really. It just changes their political motivation slightly. Apart from these two critical points, they have other major demands. They want the Reform Committee to reform the appointment procedures of the ministers. Mr. Richter clarified that the Assembly should have a say in the formation of the Council of Ministers. Well, that's something a majority on our party also supports. Well, Mr. Richter also talked about abolishing the number of honor rights for Ducking, so to give him absolute immunity and makes him a permanent member of the Assembly. Well, that one is a controversial one. I doubt the SP would like that.
Immunity of the justices, the impeachment of the president, limiting the power of presidential decrees. All this came up during the committee meetings.
Yes, reforms expect big reforms, while a faction of the SP are not very keen on pushing changes that are too great. I'd say keeping everyone in the middle ground is the safest bet, not need to agitate anyone too much. I disagree. We need to push for comprehensive reforms. I'm with you on this, Mr. President. Well, regardless of what Mr. Hayne decides, we'll need to work together to push this agenda.
Now we have a better picture of your intentions, sir. We'll start reaching out to my contacts to make a draft that works for us.
I'll present your input to the committee. In a few months, we'll have a draft on your desk to make final changes yourself.
I think this is just another fruitful meeting, sir.
Your service is appreciated.
Thank you for the kind words, sir.
And kind of on. Yes, Mr. President.
I think this is what we'll call it, sir. Have a good day.
They left the room. Cool. Alright. I don't know why I was expecting that to be where we start to make our changes already, but that's okay. Alright, so looks like let's just go up here to Volkson for the report. Volkson urges calm. Chancellor Hagel has released a statement through official channels urging calm on the Roadmark-Swordland dispute. General Secretary has also mentioned that the climbing tensions should immediately be de-escalated to protect the peace and prosperity of Eastern Maricopa. Obviously. Rumburg. Rumburg condemns closure. The Queen of Rumburg, Beatrice Livingston, has released a statement this morning to publicly condemn the closure of Swordland's Council and Dome. Thornburg has also accused Swordland of increasing tensions in the region. On one hand, I kind of want to say they started it, but it's not a very presidential response. Alright, from Lockhaven, HD construction plans started by SSC. The Minnesota State Corporation has reported that preparatory work for the H3 highway has already started, including clearing land and demolishing buildings in the path of the future roadway. Construction of the highway will be starting in the next months, working west from Lockhaven. Sweet. Alright. Guess let's head back to Olsor for a meeting with Chief Justice Orso Hawker. The administration has been working day and night on the overwhelming amount of issues that are facing the country. The department sent several documents which required my signature so they could start working on the new decisions that were taken. After I signed dozens of them, I closed my eyes to relax for a moment. Another long day. Even though I really wished to leave the palace for the day, Lucien earlier told me that Chief Justice wanted to speak with me. We planned to meet in my office in 30 minutes. I waited for him, wondering what subject he would raise. Let's just relax. I stretched out my arms and looked out the window. Thousands of shimmering lights in the whole Zord skyline were mesmerizing. Suddenly, I heard a knock on the door. It was Lucien.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Lucien.
I am sorry that I couldn't explain the situation to you in detail earlier, sir. The Chief Justice insisted on seeing you this evening. I do not know what he has to say, but it will probably be about the new Constitution. He will be coming shortly with Judge Mr. Karachi to the meeting. We shouldn't take them lightly.
They're probably here to threaten us to stop the reforms.
We knew they'd react at some point. We should...
There were 3 knocks at the door. Lucian checked his watch. He looked rather worried. Olivia opened the doors. Chief Justice Urso Hawker and Judge Heron Karachi entered the room.
Good evening, Mr. President. It's great to see you.
Evening. Welcome, Justice Karachi and Chief Justice Hawker.
Good to see you indeed.
Urso gestured to the sofa in the office. May I? Let's have a seat, gentlemen. We all took our seats on 2 opposite sofas and made ourselves comfortable. How are your first couple of months, Mr. President? I hope you're faring well. It's a weird voice, but it's fine. I don't care. Thank you. It's been very busy, but I'm doing good. It will only get busier. Yes, I think you're doing a good job so far. Considering all that's happened around us, with the shootings near the palace and soldiers on our borders. He let out a deep sigh. It is a troubling time.
We appreciate your concerns. So, you probably know why we're here.
Please enlighten us, Mr. Hawker.
We know you're working on a new constitution. The Supreme Court does not approve of this. With all due respect, the Constitution needs to be updated, sir. I'm sure you're well aware of the public demand and our circumstances.
Is that so? I see that you are the one who's not aware of our actual circumstances. You want to make a weak constitution in the midst of problems, both inside and outside. Even if your proposal passes the Assembly, I'll make sure it does not pass the Supreme Court, so that much is clear. So he came to threaten us. How is that a threat, Mr. President? I merely stated my position. There's no threat here, Mr. President. Mr. President, you seem to be only partially informed about the current situation. Please let us explain the reason of our stance. We're racist old bastards. Oh, please explain. We are protecting the Constitution because it works, Mr. President. It is efficient and it gives you the authority to lead the nation with swift decisions. It helps keep all the fuckers in power. Alright, I should probably stop the weird extra comments. So then there's more important problems and threats than we should face right now. Instead of nitpicking about some paragraphs of the Constitution, we have the potential war within our borders. Orso signaled Heron with his hand to let him speak instead.
Mr. President, I know that you're a busy man, so I'll make this quick. We all know that Sword Security Forces found stashes of Rombergian weaponry in the hideouts of British separatist K-74s are roaming inside Solon at this moment. As much as Romberg poses a direct threat, now it's clear that they're also intervening in our country and weaponizing our minorities against us. It's not unprecedented to think the Blues will start the terror again with the new toys. Not to mention the fights that broke out between the left and right wing after the shooting of Bernard Seconds. Communists are rising with support for Cantona. The case is imminent for Solent. And sadly, we don't see the administration taking the necessary precautions. You said you will not focus on military during your term. Under current circumstances, that cannot be tolerated at any cost.
Yeah, the court has no jurisdiction over these matters.
On to our part of the state, Mr. President. We are all responsible if Solon fails to overcome these threats. But regardless of that, are you also aware that the armed Bluish separatists have direct connections to the Workers' Party of Pelugia?
The Workers' Party is a democratic party. They don't like the militias. They're not the same.
They may claim they have no ties to the separatists, but most of the members used to be part of them before they were formed the Workers' Party of Pelugia.
How about the name, Mr. President? It's not the Workers' Party of Solon, is it? As far as I'm aware, there's no nation called Pelugia around here.
What is this all about?
The only reason they're not at the Assembly is because of the electoral threshold. They have gotten quite big. They are clearly getting outside help, and their connections to the paramilitary Bluish force cannot be denied. And all of a sudden, the reformers are trying to decrease the electoral threshold so the Bluish separatists can be legitimized in the Assembly to achieve their aims of independence. That is way too dramatic.
Say what you will, Mr. President, I'm stating the obvious.
It's only obvious to super racist old dudes.
But I wish the only issues were the Bluish terrorists in Romberg.
The reformers' suggested changes would also bring the communists, who are backed by United Cantona, into the assembly. Do you see the pattern yet? Yeah, I apologize, gentlemen, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. This is not a conspiracy theory. Haven't you been briefed by your national security team? Maybe you should suspect them as well. We should take the necessary measures against communist and bluish plots, as well as increasing our military budget against possible conflict with Lumberg. And, of course, not to fall into the traps of the reformists by listening to their demands. They are clearly plotting to weaken the president and whole administration in order to exploit the situation. Which brings us to some very important information that we have. It's definitely something you need to hear, and it can change absolutely everything.
With all due respect, Mr. President, I think this is getting slightly ridiculous.
I mean, slightly seems like an understatement. But, alright, let's hear the old fuckers out. Jesus, please explain, Mr. Hawker. The person in question is Mr. Franz Richter himself, the leader of the reformists. We have enough information to infer these ties to Arcasia. Arcasia is aggressively growing their influence around the world. Now we've Mr. Richter coming with these ridiculous demands for a new constitution amidst a chaotic period in Solomon. All the pieces seem to fit perfectly. That is why the Supreme Court will be doing what it takes to stop these reforms and preserve the constitution.
Yeah, and how would you know that Mr. Richter has ties to Arcasia?
Mr. Gallard, we all know he has been in Arcasia many times because it's been documented, but what do you think he's been making hidden flights to the country? He was hiding his flights to Arcasia? He was.
He has been spotted in a hotel in Arcasia last year, where they held the Conference on Economic Development of Volatile Regions. Right around that time, he started to influence masses into believing that our constitution is the reason for everything bad. His trip was not documented, nor was he an official guest of the conference. We believe he had a meeting with President Walker behind closed doors. I also have a couple more photos of him that were taken in Arcasia in different cities. One's from a couple months back. Again, none of it is documented. He also attended another event in Lesbia last week. The Arcasia Foreign Minister of Affairs was there too. Or, whatever. It's fine. How can any of this be undocumented? We don't know. Even if he used a private plane, we'd be able to get the information on his flights. It means he has people helping them from inside. Many soldiers were already following his leads for quite some time, Mr. President. I cannot give away their identities, but I can give you the evidence. He handed me a small file. It contained official documents from the Soros border guard with highlighted dates that show no trace of Franz Richter's name. There were clear photos of him that were taken in the conference in Arcasia, as well as remarks by lesbian Arcasian citizens who claimed to have seen him with Arcasia businessmen around the same dates. There was also an official transcript of one of his speeches where he claimed to be in Benfield on the dates of the conference in Arcasia where he was spotted. Lucien skimmed through the documents with skepticism, which slowly turned into surprise. These seem to be real. Of course they are, Mr. Gillard. These seem to suggest that Arcasia is behind the reformers. Their demands not only benefit Arcasia, they want a civil weak administration where we face all these threats. This is clearly a plot against Solon, but Romberg is part of the plan too. This cannot be a coincidence that they are weaponizing our minorities around us at the same time. Now you understand the reasons for our current stance, and also our suspicions about your advisors who clearly have not given you this vital information. Lucy gave him a sharp look. We appreciate the information, Mr. Hawker, but I advise against jumping to conclusions right away. We still need to check the information. There's not much to think or check. This is clearly an emergency. In such cases, the Constitution gives the President the right to use his emergency powers. If we work together, you can be sure the Supreme Court will not block your declaration of emergency. Dude, you want me to declare a state of emergency over this shit? Of course, we can't wait for the process of the Assembly to take care of these issues. You must exercise presidential powers for a fast and effective solution. Which means you might need to suspend parts of the Constitution to give more authority to our security forces to deal with these issues. We must officially investigate Mr. Richter as well. You can devise a strong security decree if you can base it on Articles 57 and 58, which gives the President the right to suspend parts of the Constitution to deal with national security threats. You can directly bypass the Assembly in such a situation. The only thing you need is the Supreme Court to allow the emergency to be declared, and you have our word on that. Sir, I think this is going too far. We shouldn't escalate things so fast. Mr. President, why don't we talk in private? It's only two of us. We can devise a plan together. I know how we can use the Constitution to advantage. It would be more effective if Mr. Gallard and Mr. Gallard should leave the room before we discuss it. Sir, I advise against it. Yeah, nah, thanks, brah. Regardless of the situation, I'll be proceeding with the reforms. even though you're aware of our national security threats.
You're making a big mistake, Mr. President. We will not allow you to succeed. Gentlemen, I think it's about time to end this bullshit. This meeting.
Well, thank you for having us, Mr. President. Have a good evening.
They both left the room without saying anything else.
That is not good. They clearly tried to threaten you.
Yeah, I'm not scared of them.
Also, we'll be doing whatever it takes to damage you. We need to be careful. There are so many old god sympathizers in our party. We can't let them divide us. And he would definitely try.
After a short evaluation of the situation in our hands, Lucien left me in the presidential office. It was obvious that the old guards would be my main rivals in the near future. Sweet. Alright. Well, let's check out the news here. Hawker in Maroon Palace. Chief Justice Ursula Hawker has been spotted entering the Maroon Palace. Our sources are intrigued by the timing of this visit that is happening right after the increased conversations around the so-called democratic reform. Historically, Mr. Hawker usually does not frequent the palace unless for official business, and this was certainly an unplanned visit. Clearly, there must be something he wants out of this. Our speculation is that this has something to do with reforms. More to come later. Alright, that appears to be everything on the map. No more newspapers. So, since it's the end of this churn, I think that's going to spot us a to go and call it for today. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see y'all next time.